Jason Hill from VMWARE, Duncan Johnston-Watt from CLOUDSOFT, John King from Platform, Daryan, sorry Daryan, I've been practicing all day. There you go, from Intel, my old colleague, Philip Walsh from SIMPLEX, and Asaf from MELLANOX. So a good spread of people on the panel. Thank you very much for your support for the event. I'm going to kickstart, I think, table 11. Is table 11 there? You had a question around some of the acronyms. Got a spokesperson from table 11? No? Right, well, I've got to ask it myself because I do just so happen to know what the question was on table 11, which was around the acronyms of, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. We're all seeing, we're all nodding, and Jane, I've got an answer for that. But that will give us way of kickstarting the panel. So I'm going to start off, in fact, with Jason, in terms of where VMware's come from, you and your past life as a buyer. I guess it's platform as a service, right, is where you were, or where you are now. Can you just put a bit of shape around where VMware sees that?
Sure. Hope you can hear me. Yes, pleased to meet you, Jason Hill from VMWARE, not WMWARE. Promoted up by a letter. So I think the view we have at VMWARE is we've come from the virtualization space. Clearly, that is a building block for cloud. The strategy we have at the moment is that we focus at three levels: at an end user space, an application layer, and also an infrastructure space. So I suppose many of you will probably think of VMware as infrastructure optimization. We certainly do that. We've expanded the strategy, so we're now, and back to some of the messages that you've recently heard, at an end user space, we're focusing on how do we enable a move from a device-centric world to a user-centric world. So how do you access as a user your application, your data from any device? So we have solutions in that space. In an application layer, we're really focused on how do we enable greater agility in application development. And again, you're probably aware or not of the Spring Source application framework that we have. And again, at an infrastructure level, we clearly have VMware vSphere, but we also have a number of other solutions there that are really focusing not just on CapEx optimization, but really moving into the OpEx space. So how do you automate? How do you get to that effectively lights out type of approach? That's really that's our view. That's where we're headed.
So let me go kind of down the stack a little bit, John. In fact, platform as a service, I guess, VMware is more the infrastructure area. How are you positioning that in terms of the evolution from grid now to cloud?
Well, I mean, if you take 20 years of grid have taught us how to manage resource and conflict between application, and then the key in cloud is applications. How do your applications serve? Not the infrastructure, not the, at the end of the day, the end goal is to look at stateless applications. And that's where we've driven our cloud viewpoint, is take our learnings from managing job scheduling, managing how we manage conflicts and use of resource, and take that across the whole infrastructure. So that's how we look at cloud. We look at cloud and we look at private cloud. Let's make that clear. We look at private and hybrid cloud.
So you're the platform level in the private cloud. MELLANOX, again, part of the infrastructure, deep down. How are you starting to position, the connection, connectivity into John's grid, no doubt?
So over the years, we've focused over the years, we're focused on performance targeting customers. So we have seen it in high-frequency trading. Some of you are familiar with MELLANOX as providing the infrastructure for these environments. High-performance computing, where the goal of the customers was the performance. And a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, people came to us that they understood that performance is the means for the economical benefit for cloud environments. In order to be providing a true cloud, you need to be very efficient, and to realize that the performance underneath that infrastructure has to be such to enable the economical value of it. And this is we've been working very closely with end users that have been experimenting, I would say, a few years ago, and now are taking it into production. And we see how much the efficiency of the underlying networking part is important. And I was thinking about what Rupert was saying earlier with the different areas that people need to look at. And by now we found ourselves touching all of them, whether it's accelerating not just the traditional networking part, but also storage, also looking at the management aspects of it and the provisioning part of it. All of it has to be done from the bottom up, and we're providing these solutions as well.
So at the top of the stack, you know, I know Tariq's slides had it, you know, the application, the business functions. Philip, you know, what does all this cloud stuff mean to you in the software as a service space?
Yeah, we are effectively software integration experts, if you like, and we deliver those applications to some of the world's largest transaction banks within, for the benefit of this audience, a cloud-based environment. So the interaction, if you like, from our side is we're facing the business requirement from the customer, and we have to rely on these guys getting the cloud right, because in actual fact it's the business driver, as one of the slides showed, that ultimately will drive usage of the cloud. We find ourselves in a position where having spent years in the early days outsourcing payments and post-trade clearing and settlement, we're being asked to provide more and more applications, pretty much the iPad type environment for the back office, on whichever environment is required by the market. And today obviously cloud is on the tip of everyone's tongue. And that's our involvement with cloud as an application provider.
Business level, and these guys deliver what you need. Table 8, anybody brave enough to ask the question from Table 8? I guess you can't, because I've got the words, I've just realised, so they can't actually read them. Table 8 came up with a wonderful question, which in actual fact is I think it's time for Duncan, which is, what new styles of project and program initiatives are you seeing which might call cloud, right? And you know, how are cloud-enabled approaches, or enabled cloud approaches, you know, that weren't around a few years ago, how are they opening up, you know, new projects which a few years ago just weren't embarked upon?
Well, people talk about cloud backwards, so this is cloud ask backward, where basically you take what you have and you try and shove it into a cloud. So that's not very interesting, okay? That's basically just trying to use cloud as a cheap resource. Cloud forward is where you're actually thinking about re-architecting your applications. So one of the key things somebody said, John said, so I've got John and Jason to deal with, and it's I can't really go, but with John said it's about the application. So what that really means is that all of this stuff that we talk about, which by the way you have in your own organization. So one way of thinking about cloud is, you know, if you're in IT production, sorry, but if you are, then you're dealing with infrastructure and you're trying to package it up. If you're one of the guys providing middleware across the bank or the institution, then you're really providing that platform. And then ultimately, if you're in a business line of business, you're building applications. So then you're providing, quote, software as a service. It's just taking that idea and extending it further and saying, what can we do with cloud, or I would rather say elastic infrastructures at our disposal? How can we make more efficient use of those? How can we actually create different architectural patterns? So, you know, can you actually migrate workloads around? Can you create an elastic application fabric where you'll focus on not just distributing the data, which we know how to do and have done for many years, but also how do you distribute processing across that data?
Okay.